This is Michael Woodward, and this is episode 219 of the Jumblethink podcast.
T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink podcast, where we interview amazing entrepreneurs about their journey of turning dreams and ideas into reality. Along the way, we're going to share some tips on how you can turn your own dreams and ideas into reality too. Our guest on today's episode is musician Adam Miller. More about Adam in a moment. If you haven't subscribed to the Jumblethink podcast, head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe to the Jumblethink podcast. For iTunes, jumblethink.com/iTunes, and for Spotify, jumblethink.com/Spotify. Now let's jump into today's episode. Hey there, welcome to Jumblethink. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host. We have a killer show lined up for you today. Today's show is being sponsored by our friends at mightytravels.com/jumblethink and opportunityinchina.com. When you're looking for the best fares, make sure you go on over and check out mightytravels.com/jumblethink. They'll help you find the best prices for your next trip. And opportunityinchina.com, they can help you find the perfect institution to learn at if you're a student in Asia, or if you have a bachelor's degree, they can help you find a great career in Asia teaching at universities throughout China. Make sure to check them out at opportunityinchina.com. I am so excited about today's guest. His name is Adam Miller. With a unique approach to the guitar, Adam Miller's music is groovy and approachable, while having a melodic sophistication that only comes from years of cross-genre hopping. His inclusion of complex rhythms and dissonant, haunting phrases combined with breathtaking riffs and melodies are his signature. His jazz-infused style with finger-picking mastery creates improv-filled live performances that are beautifully unpredictable. This has seen him share the stages with Les Paul, Tommy Emmanuel, Matt Schofield, Russell Morris, Charlie Hunter, Adam Levy, Tony McManus, and many, many more. Following a relentless international touring schedule the past few years, which have seen him perform in the United States, Canada, UK, Germany, France, Italy, Poland, Japan, and Australia, Adam Miller has just released his new album, The Defining of Success, along with an EP with acoustic versions of some of those songs too. You can check him out at adammiller.com.au. Now let's welcome today's guest, Adam Miller. Adam, thanks so much for being on the podcast with us today.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure to be a part of it.
You know, I don't even remember exactly how I found your music. All I remember is that it was on Apple Music, and I was like looking for some jazz and blues kind of stuff because I've been playing guitar for since I was like 14, but I've been wanting to do more and more jazz stuff, and so I was looking to listen for stuff that would inspire me. Stumbled on your album. I think it was Shifting Units, because Defining of Success hadn't come out at that point. And I just went, okay, this inspires me. So thanks for that.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
You, we were talking offline, and you were saying you don't consider yourself an entrepreneur. So that kind of throws our first question out the window, but let's talk about that because
that's all right.
Yeah. Our first question is usually tell us about your story into entrepreneurship, but you don't consider yourself an entrepreneur. Why is that?
I think for me, the idea of an entrepreneur always conjures up, someone that like has some amazing, brilliant idea, makes a couple of $1 million, sells that, then has another brilliant idea, makes a few more $1 million, sells that, and just, I don't know. I consider entrepreneurship like a road to making money, whereas as a musician, I've managed to survive pretty much doing it the last 20 years, but it's I'm not rolling. It's always looking for the next paycheck a little bit as well. So it's sort of a different way of surviving, I guess. It's sort of it's always the fight between the artist and the businessman in a way.
Yeah. And I find that interesting because part one of your definition is like someone who creates and then sells something. Well, that's what you
Yeah.
do. Yours just happens to be in the form of song. And that's what
Yeah.
you're selling. And then you're selling experiences when people come to your shows and experience the music. So while you're not making like, startup money, and let's be honest, how many startups are actually truly making like unicorn startup money? They're not.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that what you're doing is so creative. And so tell us the story of your musical journey and how you found music as an outlet for you.
Okay, well, I guess it really started very young for me, as most sort of musicians do.
Yeah.
I started playing guitar, I think, when I was about 8. I was
Okay.
playing actually organ before that, like with the pedals and all that sort of thing. I got sent to organ lessons.
Like, are we talking like old school, like chamber organ? Or are we talking like B3 Hammond kind of organ?
We're not talking B3 Hammond. We're talking like the one that everyone's seemed to have in the corner of their room in the 80s when pianos went out of fashion and they had, the bossa nova beats and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That sort of vibe.
Yeah. We had one of those. I remember those.
Yeah. The kind of things you see, like, well, they're not even in yard sales. They're just in throw out piles these days.
Right.
Yeah. So I was doing that. And so I started guitar very young. And I think like it was, I guess, very late 80s, early 90s, and I was trying to sing like along with guitar,
Okay.
and I just sucked, because I was a kid. I was like 8, 9 years old, so I couldn't sing along to like Billy Joel songs and things I was into at the time.
Yeah.
And then I found, just by coincidence, instrumentalist, a very famous guitarist now, Australian guitarist by the name of Tommy Emmanuel.
Yeah.
And it was just luck that my mum had happened to see him on a television show in Australia. He wasn't actually that big even in Australia at that time. And yeah, I just thought it was cool because it sounded like I just sounded the same because I play guitar and he played guitar. So I just started learning all these songs, not really realizing the level of difficulty sort of going on in them.
Yeah.
But it also forged my love of instrumental music, which has also sort of been a huge thing, I guess, sort of throughout my career, and, a very conscious decision made to sort of follow a different path, I guess, from the mainstream.
I want to take a moment and hear how you define your music, because I know how I would define it from a stylistical standpoint, and you have multiple different outlets of what you play, how you play, and that. But what would you define your sound as?
It's really hard, especially when you like looking at genres, and I've just released an EP and I'm trying to work out where it fits genre-wise, but it's so hard. Essentially, a lot of what I do is, a lot of my songs could be almost just pop songs.
Okay.
In a way, but then they're instrumental, and then they always have a huge element of improvisation to them. So it's I always class it the closest to jazz, because I think that's the thing you can get away with stylistically, of saying it's just music that focuses on improvisation and exploration. But the word jazz also comes with a whole lot of problems as well, and derogatory sort of it's sort of a negative word, in a lot of senses too. So yeah, like stylistically, it's always hard to explain. Like, I think the best way I explain it, like if someone says, "Oh, you're a musician, what do you play?" I'm like, well, it's sort of closest to jazz, but it's like anything you can play on a guitar that sort of sounds fun.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing about that is we last season now we had Eric Reed on, who is a piano player, and we asked the similar questions. He's played with Wynton Marsalis and jazz greats, and he's an amazing piano player. And we said, in the intro, you're a jazz pianist, and he was like, "Don't call me that. That's one style I play. I'm a musician who plays piano, who loves music." And I just found that as an interesting definition, because at least here we like to put everyone in a box so we can understand them.
Well, I think that's the way music especially works in general. Well, it's the way anything works if you actually, get into it. But yeah, music's always a tough one, and it does lead to things being taken a certain way. I think instrumentalist is sort of the closest thing to say what I do is that I just don't sing.
Mm.
There aren't words with my music, so
Yeah.
yeah. But the amount of times I get people saying, "Oh man, if you just wrote words, you'd be a pop star." I'm like, yeah, but then anyway, that's another story.
Yeah, listening to your music, I think blues inflections, I think some folk, especially the acoustic stuff that you do, folky at times, but not really. I would say that you are a little bit of a cleaner version of John Mayer as an instrumentalist.
Yeah, that's always a nice compliment. I like that one.
Okay.
And certainly I'm a huge John Mayer fan as well. Anyway, and when you're talking like John Mayer is probably the only singer-songwriter I've personally grown up with.
Yeah.
Being similar ages, he's a little bit older than me. Like, I first heard his first record by someone actually saying, "You've got to hear this record. It sounds like you playing guitar on it."
Yeah.
And I'm
that was
like,
like
cool.
Room for Squares or something, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, it really was like that. Only he could sing amazing, and he, from a lyrical point of view, it was like the stuff that I personally connected to at the time. So
Yeah.
it's definitely, he's actually one of the few singers I do listen to.
Yeah. I love his music too. Just saw him a year and a half ago and killer concert. Just the musicality where you're going and you're like, these are players. They're not just like, a lot of bands you go, oh, they're a good band, but these are people playing at their highest level. So for you are playing at an incredibly high level too. And you do a lot of stuff on your own, a lot of instrumental stuff that is just like solo, but you also do trio and other work. Talk to us a little bit about your approach depending on how you're playing and the environment you're playing.
Okay, so a lot of in an ideal world at the moment, I would probably like to be playing more in a trio most of the time, or with other people.
Yeah.
A lot of that decision is honestly financial and circumstantial. Like, it's just the ability to pay other musicians, and like the reality of if you're touring and paying them to perform, paying them to rehearse, paying their travel costs, hotels, food. It's a really difficult thing, and it means that you have to be in a financial situation, I guess, from the returns of concerts to be able to actually do that.
Yeah.
And because I have the ability to play solo, and a lot of, especially my international career, was very propelled by the way that I perform solo and the things that I'm able to do on a solo guitar.
Yeah.
That really did propel my international career. So for the most part, other than the odd show in LA and New York, I've always performed solo overseas.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to take a little bit of a step back in your career. And you've been playing for, what, 20 plus years now?
Yeah, well, it's close. Yeah, 30, actually.
Wow.
Playing guitar for 30 years.
When did you... There are a lot of people that aspire to be musicians. Especially like you grow up and you go, hey, I'm going to grab a guitar, or now it's all the synth beat stuff and, octopads and programming. And so the genres have changed, but so many people do that, and very few come to the level of elite player. I think you fit into that elite player level. What do you think it is for you that allowed you to continue on the journey to be like, this is what I really want to do, where so many others fall off or don't have that gifting to get them there?
Well, I think it was a couple of things for me. It was definitely starting so young and not exactly realizing the level I was sort of playing at.
Okay.
Just actually playing the music I like just happened to be difficult, so I was playing that and working on that. And then, for me, actually, music was never a real career choice. It was not something I sort of actively pursued, because it just seemed like, being like a teenager in the 90s, the idea of being a musician was like, oh, okay, so that you've got to get a record deal, and then you get a record deal, and then that's it. So,
Right.
but that was the process to, sort of doing it at all. And I was in a band like my late teen years that I guess were sort of like the Chili Peppers, was the closest sort of, they were definitely a huge influence on us, but we sort of, that's what we played. And, that sort of garnered some success, like in the university, the equivalent of college world, I guess, in Australia. And, we developed a bit of a following. It looked like we were going to get signed to a major label for about 10 minutes. And then, but then, it sort of started into, we actually released a CD on our own. Like actually I recorded it as well in
Wow.
very early days of recording.
Yeah.
With a computer that was, what did I work it out? It's like 1/10 of the speed of the current iPhone. And it actually had 1 gigabyte of hard drive. And I used to rent a CD burner to finish and back up the projects between, because I couldn't afford a CD burner in the computer at the time. And I think that sort of led me definitely into that self-propelled world of music, like actually going, okay, so we don't have a record deal, but we're still going to try and make this happen. And I was still studying other things at university, like sort of medical based things, until music just took over my life. And eventually, I just sort of did drop out and sort of take it all on myself. And a big part of that as well, early days, was probably I had the opportunity to open shows for Tommy Emmanuel and, sort of meet my idol and see how he sort of did it. And it sort of gave me a bit of insight that, things were possible, and things, the music industry was starting to change of how to go about things. And it was more open to being able to do it yourself rather than having to just rely on the big break.
I want to go a little bit more into the business of music in our second segment. But one of the stories that you tell, and I'm sure you've told it a billion times on like Acoustic Guitar Magazine and some of the other things, but you have to tell it because it's just a crazy story. Tell us about going to see Les Paul perform in New York City and how that impacted you.
So that was an insane weekend for me. I'd come to the US. I was like, maybe 25, 26 at the time. It was the first time traveling overseas by myself, actually. And it was an exploration trip. It was like, I was probably at the crossroads of giving up music at that stage and going, okay, well, it's probably all a bit hard, and I probably am not good enough to actually do all this. And there were two things that sort of happened that weekend. And the first thing was actually I'd traveled up to Rochester, New York, from New York City on a Greyhound bus. In the process, I actually had my bag stolen off the bus.
Oh my goodness!
So I had no clothes, no anything. I had to go and buy clothes when I turned up there, and it was all an effort to see Charlie Hunter play.
Yeah, who's a big inspiration for you?
Huge inspiration, like just completely blew my mind. His technique and just creating sort of the music that I wanted to create on one guitar. I hadn't heard anyone sort of do it at that point. So, I went to this festival in the middle of nowhere. It was, I don't know, 40 minutes out of Rochester, actually, in reality. So it was like on a farm.
Wow.
And it was so cool. And, I got to meet Charlie that day. He was amazing with me. We've become good friends now, but, even just, he's like, well, where are you staying? How are you getting back? I was like, I have no idea. This is pre-data on phones, pre-Uber. And I had no idea. So he drove me back and we had dinner and we hung out. So that was insane for one, just to be able to meet someone like that, hang out with them, talk music, talk guitar. And it was incredible. And then I get back to New York. I'm sort of all inspired still. And I've been hanging out at Rudy's Music, the really famous music store
Which
that was
Rudy's though? There's
still on 48th Street at that
okay.
time. They only
All right.
had the one store,
So
so
they
it
didn't
was
have the one down in the Village or anything.
no,
There. Oh, okay.
no.
Yeah,
It was the magical original store that I'd seen like in John Mayer making of videos of him walking in and trying out stuff.
Edge got guitars there.
Yeah.
Bottom there. One of his famous Strats got that from
Yeah.
Rudy's. Yeah, killer spot.
So just so much music history on that street. And I was talking to them about going to see Les Paul that night, and they're like, "Oh, you should play with him." And I'm like, "I'm not going to play with him. I'm just going to." Actually, what I was asking him, I was like, "How many people do you think I could take my guitar?" Because I was staying in a hostel. I didn't like leaving my guitar in the room at the time.
I don't like leaving a guitar in a hotel room, let alone a hostel.
Yeah, so I was a little freaked out. They're like, "Yeah, you'll be fine. Everyone takes guitars for Les to sign." I was like, "Okay, cool." So I go that night. I turn up, and the simple thing is, I get to the door, and they said, "Oh, do you have your ticket?" I'm like, "Oh no, I'll buy a ticket." And they said, "Oh, both shows are sold out tonight."
Wow.
And I went, "Oh," and I just jokingly said I had a guitar. I said, "Oh, I'm one of the guest artists tonight."
Yeah.
And they said, "Okay."
No question of that. We're not going to check a list or anything.
No question. Nope. Took me downstairs, backstage, in front of Les. He says, "Oh, hi, who are you?" I was like, "Oh, I'm Adam Miller. I'm from Australia. I've, played with Tommy Emmanuel, toured with Tommy Emmanuel a lot." And he's like, "Oh, okay, great. What songs are we playing tonight?" So I don't know how I did it. I don't know how this all happened. But yeah, managed to walk my way into playing 2 shows with Les Paul on Broadway in New York on my first visit. It was, it was a real turning point for, I guess, my confidence and all of it, and just being able to, it was a real seal of going, okay, maybe I am good enough to actually pursue this beyond, the little world that I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I have to ask, with that story, and I've never heard you answer this question on any of the interviews that I've watched through.
Yeah.
What were your nerves like going out on stage going, I was just coming for a show. Now I'm playing with Les Paul. What was that like?
I don't know. I was just ready to do it. Wow. It was just sort of Les is intense on stage. He was, because he said, "Okay, so what I'm going to get you to do is play a song by yourself first, solo, and then we'll do a song with the band." But it's not like the band leaves the stage. Yeah. I'm just standing in the middle of all of them watching me with, a sold out crowd. And it was amazing when the first thing I did, and I was a little bit, I guess, flashier in my playing at the time. And I start off with this giant, fast run. This song starts with that into a big harmonic sort of thing. And it was, and it's a little pause before I actually start the song. And Les actually, after I do this run, goes, "Oh, hey, hold up. He goes, I think there's a phone call for you, son. I think you need to go." And he's looking at me and he goes, "No, you're just too good. Keep going." And it was so that happened. Yeah. I'm on stage for 30 seconds, pull out this huge run, and Les that sort of humor, I don't know, it sort of made it easier in a way.
So it put you at ease instead of caused the tension to go up.
Yeah, it was sort of like his little seal of approval walking on. Because one thing he was about, he's like, "I haven't seen you play, but I don't care how good you are. This is about the show. Yeah. We're entertaining an audience. We're not,
wow,
doing a." I don't remember his exact words, but it was definitely about everything had to service the show. And I think knowing that going out, I knew that was part of the show, hopefully. Yeah. I didn't think I was going to get dragged off stage.
That would have been a very different story to tell for sure.
Yeah, it would have been pretty crazy. But it was amazing how we just to have that experience, have that story. I remember my grandfather is actually a huge fan of Les
Yeah.
Paul. And I remember ringing him on the way back from that night and just saying, yeah, Granddad, I just played with Les Paul. And all he could say was, how much is this phone call costing you? Get off the phone. You shouldn't be calling
Wow.
me. But yeah,
That's crazy.
that was a special night. He was like talking about the things he'd invented over the years. And
most people don't realize that about him. He was, I have a good friend who does documentaries. He's actually worked with Tommy on several things he's done with PBS and other things, producing those. And he did a series with Les Paul, and he's like, you walk into Les's house, and you're just like, you are constantly like your mind cannot sit still, can it? And just the sheer volume of his creativity goes beyond music, and people don't know that.
Yeah, and well, especially the contribution he had to recording, full stop, and all the sorts of things like, tape echo, and all the things actually that are so easy to create digitally now. He was the guy that worked out how to do it in the analog domain, as far as I know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, those are the stories I've heard too, and just it's incredible how creativity often for creators doesn't stop outside their area of expertise. They're always curious.
Yeah, and definitely if you're trying to service your music as well, it'll always be it's always that sort of adventure.
Well, we'll be right back with Adam Miller to go deeper into the conversation of the business of music. We're going to talk about his latest album, his new acoustic EP, but his defining of success, along with talking about where he's going next and what he's doing. If you're loving today's episode, I want to encourage you to go check out over 200 more episodes of the Jumblethink podcast. Simple to do. If you like listening to your podcast on iTunes, head on over to jumblethink.com/iTunes. And for Spotify, jumblethink.com/Spotify. That'll take you right to the app, right to where you can connect with the Jumblethink podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by our friends over at OpportunityInChina.com. Here's a little bit more about them. Have you been looking for a way to change your career or social prospects? Do you see the world around you changing and haven't quite figured out what path you should take? You're not alone in seeking opportunity. Visit OpportunityInChina.com for access to scholarships to attend university in China. Or, if you have a bachelor's degree already, OpportunityInChina.com provides access to jobs in the educational sector all across China. Now, working in China is not only often well paid, but it will place you among 1/5 of the world's population, boosting your social network, bringing you more deeply into the story of globalization, and opening doors you never knew existed. Seize your opportunity now. Visit their website for more information at OpportunityInChina.com. Today's episode is also sponsored by our friends over at Mighty Travels. Here's a little bit more about them. Is your life crazy busy? Well, I know mine is, and I want to spend as much time in my day doing the things I love to do. One of the things I don't love to do is spend days looking for great airfares. Well, our friends over at MightyTravels.com have made it easy for you to go in, set notifications, to get emails and text messages directly to you so that you never miss a great deal on the flight that you're looking to book. So swing on over to MightyTravels.com/Jumblethink. That's MightyTravels.com/Jumblethink to learn more about how you can get notifications right to your own devices and score the best price tickets for your next trip. Now let's jump back into our conversation with our friend Adam Miller. We are back with Adam Miller to go deeper into the conversation of music. Adam, before we get rolling into this segment, I want to let people know how they can find and connect with you. You have a killer Instagram account, which I follow and have spent way too much time liking and reliking and rewatching videos going, that is just
awesome.
Sick. So tell us how we can connect with you.
The easiest start point is my website, which is just adammiller.com.au on the end. And it has links to everything from there, but my Instagram is Adam Miller Guitar. My Facebook is Adam Miller Music. And yeah, from those few places you can pretty much find me everywhere.
I will make sure that those are in the episode notes. So if you're listening right now, wherever you're listening, it's right below that little player. You can find the link right there. Go check it out. Go follow him on Instagram. You will love his feed for sure. Check out his website. He's got great music clips over there from all of the albums. I think all of your albums. You got like a billion and two albums on there. So
there's a few.
I want to talk about the business of music in this segment because you're having to navigate a pretty seismic shift in how music pays musicians, whether it's through Apple Music, Spotify, and that whole space of the business of music has changed. A good friend of mine who wrote and produced in Nashville for years, he said, it used to be that you would write music and then being on the road was the gravy on top. That's where you would just make all the like extra money, but you made your music from the albums. Now that's changed. Tell us a little bit about how you're navigating that.
Okay, well, in my world, I've probably never really made money from albums.
Okay.
They've always been, for the most part, a business card. Okay. They're the thing that allows you to go on the road, and that's where I made most of my money. So that's sort of actually how it's been for me in my world. So, I guess I would say from being, not actually studying at a university anymore and going, I'm a professional musician from 2001. That's sort of the world I've always been in. And certainly not having ever been signed to a label. I never had the huge distribution network actually until like iTunes and that sort of thing, where people were able to find my music all over the world in sort of a common place where they would find other music. I think, the navigating of all that is just different, and it is constantly evolving. So, for me as an independent artist, what it's meant is that sort of roughly starting with iTunes, was that I was somewhat on a level playing field with anyone, It was like I'm in the same record store as everyone else finally, which I never was and never had that distribution network or the money to actually print that amount of units to be in that distribution network anyway. Right. But all of a sudden, I'm sort of in that same playing field. The streaming side of things initially was sort of terrifying, I guess, how that looked and how it sort of distracted from those sales. But, as that world progresses, it's sort of, for people like me, I think it's actually pretty good, because it just means if someone loves your record, you're getting paid still every time they listen to it, even after that one-off fee. The lack of physical sales, like things like CDs, has diminished a bit. And, I know, well, the very first tour I did with Tommy Emmanuel, so this was 2004 was the actual full, like we did like 8-10 shows where I was opening the shows for him. I was selling CDs at like $35 each.
Wow.
And we were selling, I was selling like 50 to 100 a night at those shows. So that was incredible. And now we're at the stage where, you can maybe sell a CD for $10. Yeah. Maybe $15 if you're really lucky. But I don't know how many people actually listen to them. I think a lot of people now just buy them as a souvenir for you to sign, and it's more that. And then they'll go online and stream it anyway. I know that's how it would be for me if I see an artist, because I don't have a CD player anywhere at the moment even. Yeah. So, I think it depends on your experience in the music industry. For me, my core income has been performing predominantly. The record sales side of things has just been sort of a bonus while I've been on tour. And digital sales and streaming are still nowhere near at a point for me that I could live off it, let alone buy a meal, maybe. which is a little scary, but that's, you know, the reality of like services like Spotify paying you 0.05 of a cent per
Wow.
play.
Wow.
Yeah.
So crazy. Now I want to
Mm.
talk to you about the different aspects of what you do.
Yeah.
So, of course, you are recording.
Yes.
So there's an element of creating and approach to finding your sound, your style, your tone,
Yep.
then composing and creating composition and your writing. Tell us about your approach to defining your own sound.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, I guess that's always been a huge thing for me in that process. So, like
okay.
writing and recording. I've actually recorded all my own albums as well.
Yeah.
It was something I got into really young. So when I was like 17, 18. And what year was that? Like around 98,
Yeah.
1998.
Yeah.
And so the real infancy of being able to sort of have a home studio and recording to computers.
Right.
And I got into it really early on then, just because the band I was in had paid, you know, for some recordings and they were terrible.
Yeah.
We were just, you know, we weren't spending huge budgets, but I was listening to it going, well, this doesn't sound like a record in inverted commas. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it sounds like a bad demo. And I'd been recording since I was a kid on my, you know, double deck cassette recorder and just swapping cassettes over and being able to layer. And
Yeah.
I swear sometimes they sounded better than what we were going into studios to do. So I just really got involved then and really fell in love with the art of recording, and then how much that could influence the way people hear you and the sound you actually have. So that side of things has been one I've not really been willing to let go of yet. It's
Yeah.
sort of, you know, I sort of have this dream of going into another studio and doing things and letting someone else look after that. But for me, that's so much a part of how I present myself. And to the point, like, you know, I have a really specific microphone that I use for everything. You know, it's like when I record drums, it's on the drums. When I record the guitar, it's on the guitar. And it sort of builds up my sound in a way.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like
So,
it's a paintbrush in the tool. So, okay, I'm gonna get a little nerdy.
yeah.
And what mic is it?
The mic that I fell in love with, this was about 7 years ago, I think I got this microphone. It's a Bee's Knees Arabella. So Bee's Knees is the brand, and they're an Australian company,
Okay.
sort of near the Byron Bay area. And it's
Interesting.
sort of a replica modification of an old Neumann U47 mic.
Yeah, which are stupid expensive, even
Yeah.
though the reissues. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it was just this thing, and it's sort of, you know, compared to most microphones, it's mellower.
Yeah.
It's not quite as bright,
Yeah.
and it's really a great, you know, what you hear is how it translates to a recording. So what you hear of an instrument in real life, it sort of translates that really well back to a recording without any hype and that sort of thing. So it's sort of become a real huge part of my sound. So that even when I do go and record in other studios, I always take that microphone with me. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say, I've worked in the pro audio space for years, working big festivals up to like 100,000 people.
Yeah.
I know production value when it comes to audio, and I have to say that I would have thought you would have gone through a large format studio. The sound quality is just there.
Yeah.
It's defining success. It's just very rich. It's very full. It's very defined in the tonal qualities. And so when some people hear, oh, he does it on his own, I thought it was on a Neve board or something like that. Just the kind of richness, you know?
Well, yeah. So that last record, the defining success, the drums were recorded in the living room of the house we were living in. You know, the guitar was recorded predominantly in the back room, and then we had to move house in the middle, so it was actually recorded in our bedroom at the time, and things like that. And certainly through good equipment, but just like the bare minimum of good equipment. So there were like Neve preamps equivalents and that sort of thing. But it's just the small little things I've collected over the years, and just, I've always known how to keep it simple, especially going back from my earliest days of recording with computers where I could only ever record two things at a time. So if I was recording drums,
Right.
I could only ever use two microphones.
Yeah.
So it taught me techniques and ways to do things that at first, when I had access to better things, then I'd, put 30 mics on the drums. And then I'd go, why am I doing this? It always sounds better when I use 2 or 4. So yeah, it's usually like 4 microphones at the most on a drum kit, which is a bit unusual, but it's, I sort of took those lessons I learned from not having access to large things when I was younger and just go keep those same limitations on, which is, yeah, it's been a huge part of, I guess, having, a specific sound and making sure it always translates. And I think especially when an instrument is your voice, you need to work out how to translate that the best you can.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you're using some great gear. Our friends from Two Rock, who have been on the podcast, again, I think that was season 2, maybe season 1.
Yeah.
Mac was on, and you're using Nick, is it Huber guitars?
Huber.
I always get that wrong. Henriksen acoustic amps, which are killer. Theral guitars, D'Angelica, which who doesn't know those if you're an archtop player? I mean, those are all. So tell us a little bit about how you choose the instruments you use and how that changes the tone and your sound.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess that's the whole thing of finding your voice in an instrument, isn't it?
Yeah.
What I did for a long time, I really focused on acoustic guitar and stuff. And it was, when I was, I guess first turning professional, the whole pedal world and that sort of thing hadn't gone too crazy yet. Like it didn't exist. Boutique pedals weren't around. If you wanted an overdrive pedal, you just bought an Ibanez Tube Screamer. That was it.
Yeah.
Which was cool. So it was sort of that. And then as the pedal world grew and trying to find tones, and one of the first people that I was really like trying to find the tone of was Robben Ford.
Okay.
Super famous blues jazz guitarist.
Yeah.
And, I quickly found that he got his sound from this. Well, at the time, they were $10,000 amplifiers called Dumbles. Now
Dumbles,
they're more now they're more in the vicinity of $80,000 to $100,000.
There was one on Reverb for $120 about a month ago.
Yeah, cool.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, so that led me to like Two Rock amplifiers, and that's basically how I sort of ended up there initially. But yeah, so I spent a lot of time focusing on acoustic guitar and just my playing, and so I could forget all those sort of things. And especially with an acoustic guitar, it was just like you just sounded the way you played. There was no way to sound different, really. You just had to work on your own sound. And then as I got back into an electric guitar, I kind of just used all those things to really inform my decisions. I think the interesting thing about electric guitar specifically is that I sort of spent my whole life trying to sound like other people when I played an electric guitar.
Wow.
So the things that I really did to sort of get away from that was to try to start to use equipment that I didn't associate with a particular artist.
Okay.
So, and I think that really, for me, only came in the last like 5-6 years. And, the first step for me was I built a Telecaster myself out of parts.
Yeah.
And I just used sort of different pickups to what was usual and different wood combinations. And so the guitar that got built at the end of the day didn't really have those classic Fender sounds in it, in a way. It sort of does, but it sort of doesn't. So when I played that guitar, I wasn't trying to think of it like, oh, I'm going to try and sound like Robben Ford now, or I'm going to try and sound like John Mayer now.
Yeah.
It just allowed me to sort of do that. So everything I've sort of done with gear has been trying to get something that's a little left of center so that when I pick it up, I'm not trying to replicate the sound of another artist. I'm just trying to play music.
Why do you think there's that divide for you where acoustic, it's just, you got your fingers, you got the guitar, it's going to sound what it sounds like, but then you shift your style to replicate someone else when you go to electric? Why do you think there's that divide for you?
Well, I think it's just so modular.
Okay.
There's so many things you can put on, put in between, and I guess it's I don't know. It's the classic rock and roll hero thing where you just want to sound like the people you've listened to forever. And whether that's Clapton or Hendrix or anything, it just when you plug something in, I think maybe it's to do with actually being able to listen back to it.
Wow.
That the sound isn't coming from you directly; it's actually coming from a speaker, sort of pointing back at you, so it distances yourself from it or something. I don't know. It's super psychological. It's something I sort of talk to a lot of people about, and it's just so with the equipment I use, I just found a way to sort of develop into that, and especially guitar amplifiers have a big part of that. Like the Two Rock thing, I've been playing their gear actually since that same trip to the US where I got to play with Les Paul. One of the big things was
okay.
I actually they were so small, they had very few dealers in the US even at that time. So I went to their factory because it was about an hour north from where my aunt was living.
Uh-huh.
So I was staying with her, and then I just went up there to play, and bought an amp just on my way home.
Wow. Which
From
one
that
was
trip.
that?
That was a Jet combo.
Yeah. 22 or 35?
No, before any of that existed. It was just a Jet.
Wow.
Yeah, so you could actually convert it from 22 or 35 in those days to get
cool.
nerdy. You could run it either way. So that sort of started my journey, and then I was finally able to pull some of those Robben Ford sounds.
Yeah.
But sort of as I've progressed with Two Rock, it's just really turned into, I've worked out ways to run it that it's just part of my sound now, and I'm not really trying to pull someone else's sound out of the amp. I just have my thing. It just translates the way I play the guitar into my voice. So even hopefully these days, like when I play an acoustic guitar or whether I play an electric guitar, so the result is the same. You can still hear that it's me by the way I touch the instrument.
Very cool. You recently moved from Australia to LA.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about what inspired you to make that move.
For me, in my world, there are a couple of things. Australia is isolated from the rest of the world geographically.
Yeah.
So you're always, like to get around the world, you're always a long way time-wise, and you're also financial, like just the cost of the flight to anywhere is expensive.
Yeah.
Sort of scary expensive. And I've been working and touring in the US for the past 6 years now.
Okay.
And being here maybe 3-4 times a year and working really hard, but it still hasn't really developed quite to the level I really wanted it to. And despite it actually not, while I say it's far, it's actually not that far. You get very used to it. And, despite me trying to tell people, hey, let me know, I can, if there's something on, I can be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think, especially people in the US tend to think of Australia as so far away they wouldn't even consider that a possibility. So a bit of it was to get that perception out of the way that people wouldn't offer me things because they think it's so far away.
Yeah.
And then, like the other things is it's a population thing. Australia, the total population of the country is around 26 million at the moment.
Yeah.
So there's just not quite the population to support niche styles of music or things out of the mainstream. Whereas obviously the US is a much huger population, and also so much of the press and the world looks to the US, still, especially in artistic sort of things and, the genres and the styles that I play. So it was time to sort of establish a little bit more here. The other factors in the decision is that for the last 8 years, I've been a lecturer at a university in guitar
Yeah.
and music,
Yeah.
and that had just sort of slowed up a little bit due to university funding decisions and how they treat arts at universities these days. So, and I'm just getting older and just wanted to jump in the deep end and do the adventure of moving to another country and taking on something different and being a little bit more uncomfortable in my environment. The whole idea that when you do get comfortable, it does actually, stop flows and stop the ideas and stop your ability to take risks. So yeah, we
Yeah.
just did a big risk for a while and decided to take it on.
Super cool. I want to take
Mm,
a moment and talk about Defining of Success and then the new EP.
yeah,
It seems like, from a perspective of just listening, that
yeah,
this was a huge maturing of your own, not abilities necessarily, but define it. Well, I hate to use that word because it's in the
yeah.
title, but
Please,
really defining you as a musician.
yeah. It definitely was that. It was. There were a few things that happened through that period of writing and performing,
Okay.
and like there was a lot happening in my hometown at the time.
Mm,
It was sort of just this thing where, and this is the other thing of like the smoke and mirrors of traveling and touring, is that one of the big things of traveling and touring overseas for me is that all of a sudden back in Australia, my profile jumped significantly.
wow.
People were all of a sudden actually turning up to my shows because they're like, oh, he's playing all over the world now finally, so
Yeah.
we better go see him. And it was just, and especially in my hometown, I was able to do multiple shows of my own, like a show every week, and
Wow.
hundreds of people would turn up, which is incredible. Like that was sort of the dream come true in a way, that
Wow.
I was getting to play the music I wanted to. I wasn't singing, um, and it was suddenly the hip, cool thing. So that was amazing, and a lot of the songs sort of came out of that process of trying to work out how to make it, especially sort of getting mid to late 30s.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, as you get older, and my friends that I'd grown up with, even if they were musicians, were buying houses and having children and moving on with their lives. And in some circumstances, we were seen as the poor little kids going, well, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
And then to other people, we were the heroes going, wow, look at the things that you guys are doing with your lives.
Yeah.
And that's it was a lot of this whole defining of success thing. And I I was obviously teaching at a university through that time and working with a lot of younger musicians. And you know it was not just I'd have this conversation with uh, my students and younger musicians at some point, going, okay, so what is important to you in life? Like, how important is music? How important is the idea of having a family? How important is owning a house to you? And all those things just got wrapped up into this record. So uh, all the songs have one word titles, and it is
Yeah.
very specific like that. That they started out as this basic feeling or emotion, an idea, and were expanded upon, instrumentally. But hopefully, you can sort of feel. You can take whatever you want out of those titles and put it into, your own emotion or feeling out of that simple one word. Or at shows and things, I sometimes explain more about what my idea behind that title was. And yeah, and it was a lot of the defining of success for me. It's like, what does success actually look like, and how does it work? And I guess the traditional ideas associated with success are money,
Yeah.
house,
Yeah.
car, and I basically have none of those. But I'm and right now I do have none of those. But I'm very happy and excited about, what's happening still, and the adventure of life. So it was, I guess, coming up with different ideas of what success looked like to me, and trying to help other, and especially musicians, I guess, like explore that and what's important, and maybe it doesn't look like what the rest of the world would normally associate with success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. So good. What's your favorite track on the album?
Look, my favorite track is Habit.
Okay.
That is a really special song to me, and
Uh-huh.
one that took a lot of time to get right, as far as the arrangement and what especially the bass was going to play on that. It's super simple. It almost doesn't have a melody. The
Yeah.
melody is just these dark, low voice chords, which is unusual for guitar as well.
Yeah.
And it just is this great journey of the whole idea of habit was just the things that you do that hold you back from what you're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
The things that you just do, sometimes without knowing, sometimes that you do know,
Yeah.
and that they just, burn you out without sort of even knowing. And for me, like, it's terrible, but I just developed this fidgeting habit. I still haven't managed to kick it for some reason, but it's stress related. Like, I do it when I'm stressed out or thinking. And so it was that, and then just all those things that take you away from your focus. Yeah, it was, so that, and I just love the way that song turned out as well. So that's the really special one to me.
Super, super cool. You created an acoustic EP of some of the songs from Defining of Success. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about why you did that, and how that's impacting your interpretation of the album itself.
Okay, so I'm going to be honest. That was actually a real business decision.
Okay, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things, and it's almost a market research exercise for me. So it's only been out, as we do this particular interview, like 3 days.
Yeah.
So it's there are two things, I guess, in my world. One is that a lot of my international reputation was based on me playing acoustic guitar.
Okay.
So there's a whole portion of fans that, for an album like Defining of Success, which is all electric guitar,
Yeah.
they don't want to listen to it. They don't
Yeah.
want to even know about it. They're, because of it doesn't focus on acoustic guitar. So I wanted to release something that was on acoustic guitar again, that was easy to find, to maybe hopefully reconnect with that audience, or see if they would reconnect with it. And also, because I am touring solo a lot, I wanted to present some of the information back in a solo form, so people could kind of connect. Sometimes people go, "Oh, I love the way you play it tonight, but I don't like listening to it with a band."
Yeah.
So there was that. And then in this modern sort of streaming world, we've got, I think your release cycle sort of has to be a little bit more consistent than it used to be.
Yeah.
I think at least every year, or maybe every 6 months, it looks like you have to release something to get people to cycle back even into your old catalog.
Wow.
Or to be able to, get onto the playlists and all these things that are so important for people finding your music now. So it was sort of an experiment in seeing how that all works and translates through this current digital world.
Super cool. As we wrap up
Yeah.
this segment, what are a couple tips you'd give to inspiring or aspiring musicians who they're just trying to figure out their way and seeing if it's even possible for them to do this at a professional level?
I think you need to be confident with your art first.
Okay.
So you need to have a certain amount of self-backing, because the whole thing is such a depressing world. Like, as a musician, it's just constant, for anyone else, just imagine doing, 40 job applications every day of your life and not getting even a reply to 95% of those.
Wow.
That's sort of the hardest thing. It's sort of preparing yourself for this life of rejection in a way, which is, I think that's the hardest part for everyone, is that, like, as I speak, I'm still self-booked and self-managed. So
Yeah.
I'm doing all those emails, and most just go unanswered, and they're not general emails. They're all personalized to each venue or agent or manager or thing you're trying to sort of get through. So it's sort of being confident with that and knowing that it's often not a reflection on your ability. It's just a reflection on how the industry works.
Yeah.
That's sort of the hardest thing. And I don't want to sound negative about it all, but it is just sort of, it's a really, you sort of need to prepare yourself for those sorts of things. And I know when I'm down about it, I really try to just go back to what drew me to playing in the first place.
Oh, wow.
And I know for me, a big part of it is I wake up nearly every morning and I get a guitar while I have my breakfast and, morning cup of tea. It's about reconnecting with the joy of what you actually get out of it. It's not just a job. It's actually this incredible sort of joy. But I guess sort of the best advice is to, sit down with people who are doing it, ask questions, and ask anyone questions, really, and you'll be surprised at the people you can actually contact these days, because the divide, except for when you get to the huge, pop stars and that sort of thing, is not that big. Yeah. Everyone is trying to work out how to, I think, survive in this current environment, how to make money and how it works and how it evolves. And I know for me, it's come from, asking questions, meeting up with people, buying people coffee, and listening to multiple ways of how people are doing it, how they're surviving, and, applying bits of all of it to my career.
In a moment, we'll be back for Rapid Fire Questions with Adam Miller. Our passion at Jumblethink is to help you turn your dreams and ideas into reality. One of the ways we do it is through this podcast, but we also have some killer guides to help you on the journey of turning your dreams and ideas into reality. Guides like The Dreamer's Guide to Micro Experiments, or How to Know When You Found Your Dream. They're completely free, so head on over to jumblethink.com/guides to download your free guide and start the journey of chasing your dreams and ideas. Today's episode is being sponsored by our friends over at Mighty Travels. Here's a little bit more about them. I don't know about you, but I love to travel. I just don't like looking through all the websites to find the right fares to the right locations that I want to travel to. Well, our friends over at MightyTravels.com are helping you get better rates to the places you want to travel, often saving up to $190 per ticket. You should check out MightyTravels.com/jumblethink to learn more about how you can use their service to get the right trips booked for you at incredible rates. So swing on over, check it out, MightyTravels.com/jumblethink. Today's episode is also sponsored by our friends over at OpportunityInChina.com. Here's more from them.
At the dawn of the 19th century, forward-thinking people moved to the commercial centers of Europe. Moving into the 20th century, America welcomed millions into the land of freedom and opportunity. It is now the 21st century. Many of the successes and fortunes of our generations will be made in China. To learn how you can seize opportunity in China, follow the Opportunity in China podcast. The Opportunity in China podcast is available anywhere podcasts are streamed, or you can visit our website at opportunityinchina.com.
Now let's jump into rapid fire questions with today's guest, Adam Miller.
Let's start.
We are back with Adam Miller. Adam, are you ready for rapid fire questions?
Somewhat. Yeah.
So as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
An astronaut.
Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
What is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
Ask questions.
Love that. What is one big lie And I'm going to change this up for you a little bit because it uses entrepreneurship. So I'm going to change it up and say, what is one big lie about the music industry you want to break?
That there's not room to do what you actually love, that you have to fit into a mold.
What is one change you'd like to see in the world?
Ooh, less spending on war.
Okay.
Would be a nice one. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, have you seen Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
Yeah.
Where, the future of political societies is based around your music?
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Okay. What inspires you?
Everything. Family, nature, other music. Yeah. Stars, all of it.
I'm going to give you a choice on this next question.
Mm.
The question typically goes, what is one book you think every dreamer or entrepreneur should read and why? You can answer that.
I was prepared for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer it as one album I think you should listen to.
I was going to change it up and ask you that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not a big book reader. I'm really bad with that sort of thing. But one of my favorite and most inspiring albums it's called Ghost Town by Bill Frisell.
Oh yeah.
And it's
Bill,
just such a beautiful album. And I always find inspiration listening through that.
Super cool. All right. This is literally the question. And it's kind of funny because your album's, of course, the defining of success.
Yeah.
But how do you define success?
I define it as something, as more of like a happiness and peaceful index. Things that you're at peace with at the time. And it's constantly evolving, hence the title of my album being The Defining of Success and not The Definition of Success.
Yeah.
Very specific grammar there.
Yeah. I never thought of that. That's pretty killer, actually. I like that
it's
a lot.
actually a journey, and I think
Yes.
it will just constantly change as to what that is. I long realized that I'm not going to get to, I'm a success now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is one trend you're currently excited about?
A trend I'm excited about? Ooh, that one's a hard one. Currently, we'll talk music again. The shift back to instruments and people actually being good at what they do. The trend back to, how can I say this?
Musicality? Did I say that out loud?
And people being good at what they do again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this wild card question in. It's music specific. I've never asked this question before. Probably will never ask it again.
Cool.
Will Gibson survive through the turmoil they're going through?
I think they already have.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is one habit you find helpful in your life? And we're going to change this up again as a musician.
Okay. Well, even as a business person, having worked out of essentially a home office forever, the thing I usually do every day is go out and get coffee. I love, coffee in Australia is espresso. There isn't anything else. You'll find most good coffee places in the US have probably started or owned by an Australian.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, imagine just that every little coffee shop ever is the quality of Blue Bottle for those listening. So basically what I would do is I go out every morning, grab a coffee, do that, drink that, and then I go back home, but now it's my office. So it sort of separates the two. Yeah, so that I'm going to work when I come back home. Yeah.
That is a great piece of advice. You have been doing this for a while, and there are things that you probably have learned, lots of things you've learned about the business and, of course, of creating music. But what's one thing you wish you would have known when you first started out?
I wish I would have known to reach out to people even more than I did.
Yeah.
Or actually, I think for me, it was probably the confidence to do it.
Okay.
That I just didn't feel like I could or had anything to offer for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you'd be doing?
I have absolutely no idea. I don't. My life always just led to this, whether it was actually my choice or not.
Final rapid fire question. What is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
I think the dream is I would love to not be wondering where the next thing is coming from at some point. It would be nice to be able to actually, a dream for me would be just to have an agent, someone that was booking my shows so that I knew that I didn't have to go through that constant job interview process myself every day, just so that I could focus on turning up and playing the concerts and not sort of worrying about the whole process of booking it all. That would be a pretty huge dream for me.
That's pretty cool. Final thing as we wrap up today's episode, what is a final thought you want to leave our audience with?
Oh, I didn't prepare for this question very well, obviously. I think it's to not compare yourself to the world or people around you, or even like the direct competition of things, to focus on what you're drawn to, like from your heart, whatever you're trying to achieve, and have the confidence of that, but to stay away from comparison. That's probably the hardest thing.
Super cool. Adam, thanks so much for taking time out, telling your story, inspiring us with your music, and just being so creative.
Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome. I think I learned things about myself today.
Once again, we want to thank Adam for taking time out and being on the podcast. Make sure to go check out his music. I love it. I think you'll love it too. Don't forget to go check out our sponsors and see what they're doing. You can check them out at mightytravels.com/jumblethink and opportunityinchina.com. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to encourage you. You have big dreams and ideas. You were created for something awesome. Get out there, chase those dreams, and change the world around you.
Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps. Vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.